Good afternoon. Welcome to the City Council informational meeting. The meeting will start in 60 seconds.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our Sioux Falls City Council informational meeting. Today's date's Tuesday, September 9th. Welcome all those in attendance at Carnegie and anybody that might be watching online or on CityLink. We have a nice agenda for today. We're going to begin today with a staff report from our city clerk, Lori Hogstad. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you. All right, I will make this quick. I know we have a full agenda today. I wanted to talk about a few changes that have been made at the Carnegie Town Hall. There's subtle changes, but just wanted to let you know. In the west entrance over here, we have new tile that was placed on the floor. The tile that we had was starting to break apart and just it was too tough to repair. And so a couple of weeks ago, we had new tile installed, and it's lighter. It really brightens up our entryway, so take note of that. Also, right outside the door, there's a little pocket of area where there is a fence. And inside that fence, we have our air conditioning units. And the maintenance department has added some ductwork to go up. And what that will do, sometimes it gets awful hot in here or in the building, and that will help to keep the airflow a little better. So we'll see if that helps with that. Also, there was a generator installed out in that same area inside that fenced area, and that is specifically for the AV equipment in the building. We had an incident, this is 3 to 4 months ago, and Brett Matheson dealt with this, where we had a brief power outage over the weekend. And unfortunately, what it did is it damaged one of our Crestron units, which is the unit that is sitting by Tamara, and the unit that is right here, and we use that to switch our different AV equipment around and so on. And due to that power outage, it was damaged, and it was a $4,000 repair, but it was under warranty. And so that was a lesson learned that we need some kind of a backup system if the power would go out, say on a weekend, and I think normally there's about a 10-minute warning, and maybe someone would not get here in time to shut all the equipment down. So that's why there's just a small generator out there. Now, if we would lose power in our building overall, such as the lights and so on, that would not cover that. But it would take care of all the AV equipment, including everything in this room and our control room downstairs, which is everything that we need to broadcast our council meetings and so on. So you may notice those couple items outside. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, we'll just keep going. And then last but not least, and some of you are familiar with this, the Operations Committee has assisted with this project, but each city department was asked to prepare a continuity of operations plan, or we call it the co-op plan. Our plan was done last summer, actually, July of 2013, and now all of the departments have finished this plan. They did. Regan Smith, which is our emergency manager, brought the plan over. He has it bound, and he also has a flash drive plan, which I have with me personally, so that if anything ever would happen, I would be able to access that plan wherever I was. The reason for that, and we hope that we never have a situation where we say it's time for implementation of that plan. But if we do, this would ensure continuance of our essential city council operations and functions of the government, so we could continue running. And it's interesting, it's a very comprehensive plan, very detailed, and it was modeled, I believe, after a plan from FEMA. And it also includes identifying alternate locations where we would meet if for some reason this facility would not be available, what type of records we would need, what type of access we would need to our computer records, as well as just the checklist that we would need to continue operations. So it's a good plan to have in place. We hope we never need to use it, but if we do, we've certainly got everything in writing, and all the city departments have put theirs together, and Regan has them all as well online that we can view. If anyone would like to see it, certainly let me know. I can email it to you. It's there's quite a bit in there, but it is very thorough, and if we do need it, we'll be prepared. And that's all I had today. If you have any questions, I can certainly answer those.
Any questions of Lori? Very good. Thank you,
All right,
Lori.
thanks.
Report from our fiscal committee chair. Councilor Jameson, do you have a report?
Report might be a strong word. I would use just a little update that we had one item that we covered was the fleet management methodology and future changes. Councilor Rolfing had asked the fiscal committee to review the process that the administration uses for documenting the vehicles that are essentially new vehicles or replacement vehicles, how the money is appropriated for those new vehicles and replacement vehicles. From our understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody that's on the committee, that they've requested an RFP, a process of starting an RFP to have a consultant come in and advise them on how to operate a fleet system for a city in the most efficient manner. They've talked about some a study in green energy uses for the buses and other vehicles within the city. Some of this was recorded or reported in the paper. Let's see. Also some GPS tracking options on what would be available for some vehicles so that they could monitor their fleet a little better. So that's basically what we covered. No proposals that were brought forth to the council for approval, just more informational than anything. So,
thank you, Councilor. Questions or anything to add to Councilor Jameson's report? All righty. Thank you. Proceed then into open discussion. I have a couple things I'm going to start with. Next Tuesday, September 16th, we have nothing for our informational agenda, so there will be no informational meeting at 4 o'clock next week. Good. And there were one or two items for Land Use Committee. One of them is on the deer problem, if you will. And since that requires a little bit more quicker action, instead of going through Land Use Committee, I have taken the liberty, after consulting with Councilor Rolfing, of taking off Land Use and taking it to our informational meeting on September 23rd. So there will be no informational or Land Use Committee meeting next week, just our 7 o'clock agenda. Anybody else have anything for open discussion? Councilor Staggers.
Yes. In recent months, I'm getting more and more phone calls from people who are concerned about their neighbors calling the city and complaining about code violations. And oftentimes these code violations are not really that significant, but it can be very irritating. The most recent one was a phone call from somebody who lives on East 35th Street. They have a brand new 2014 motorhome. And they had it parked in their driveway a few days beyond what the code allowed. And they got called in. And they're very, very irritated about that, because here's their own motorhome on their own driveway, and a neighbor is calling the city to harass them. And like I said, I've been getting more and more of these kind of phone calls. I guess right now the question I'm asking is, can we start doing something about this to try to cut down on the harassment?
Great open question, Councilor. I believe that is one of the items on our citizen survey regarding a lot of these ordinances are enforced through complaint. and I don't know if that's probably the best way for government to work. Councillor Jameson?
Well, as some of you may painfully remember, I was the one who had proposed changing the previous ordinance to allow for RVs to be in a front of a home or in front of their home for 24 hours, because the previous ordinance was 0 hours, 0 time. You couldn't even stop to unload or get in. And we made a compromise. And so the idea that maybe you're getting more complaints, maybe it needs to be revisited, but I haven't received those, but like before I used to, and now maybe you're getting the ones I got. And the council made a change, a revision to try to, make that change more acceptable for everybody in the community. But if you're thinking of maybe going to 48 hours or 72 or something, I think if you brought it forward, we could sure have a discussion about it.
Well, this is just one example dealing with a motorhome. I mean, there are other issues too where people are calling in.
Okay, well
so
then,
this is a broader issue than just motorhomes. I mean, this is one important part, but
right.
yeah.
Like if I could, like Councilor Karski was referring to and I think Jim is going to bring these forward later in our proposal or in our agenda to talk about our survey questions. But we are trying to drill down a little bit to try to figure out, is having complaint-driven code enforcement by citizens the best way to do it? Or should, just for instance, it's not in this question, but should we have staff traveling throughout the city looking for violations so that they're the bad guys instead of the neighbor? And because we've all dealt with it where we've had neighbors complaining about neighbors and it turns into a hostile situation and it ruins neighbors. But that's part of our attempt in the survey question, is to try to help get to a better answer.
But I think the more broader question is do we have too many codes that people are just being harassed with? And so I think that's what we should be taking a broader look at is the regulations that we have here in Sioux Falls. That's the more important thing.
And if you have suggestions for removing certain parts of codes, Councillor, you can sure bring that forward to the council as a whole. But Councillor Erpenbach, some input?
I guess I would just remind us of a couple of things. One, when Councillor Jameson brought that forward, the citizen input on that baby was strongly in favor of move the RVs out of the driveways. We went with what citizens asked us to do when we talked about. We broadened that time limit just a little bit, but we heard tons and tons of input on that, not only here in this room, but on the streets and in the grocery stores and all over the place. And so I would be very careful about bringing that thing back, because it was interesting conversation, we'll put it that way. The second thing I would remind us of is that the mayor continues to talk about being a good neighbor, and he continues to talk about we all need to help enforce the codes, we all need to follow the codes. And so I guess I would say maybe people are listening to the mayor and calling more, but I am not getting those phone calls. And I actually know about that RV that you're talking about is a lot longer than the ordinance allows. And I didn't call it in, but I'd been watching it and wondering if somebody had. So you're getting part of the story, and that's the way those go all the time. But
once
again, that's probably some good advice, Councillor. Myself, when I find myself being drawn into conflicts between neighbors, I know that it's a no-win situation for them or for me, and I choose to stay out of it because most of the time, as my role as a city councilor does not allow me by charter, there's not a lot I can do immediately to fix those problems. So, Councillor Staggers?
But once again, the broader issue is we have so many of these codes on the books. I mean, I can go down a street and I can find every house having code violation. And so if you have a neighbor that's just not very pleasant, they can
make everybody's life miserable.
They can make everybody very miserable.
Yes, sir.
Just
and
too
if
many.
you have suggestions for removing certain codes, you can sure bring them to the council. So, other input or discussion? All righty, we'll go right into our presentations. Jim David is going to lead us off with our National Citizen Survey. We had an ad hoc committee that met, and Jim, if you want to maybe brief the council on who is all on that committee and lead us into our presentation.
Good afternoon, Council. Jim David, City Council staff. In front of you are 4 custom questions and 1 open-ended question. These were recommended by an ad hoc committee made up of, or that included, Councilors Erickson, Jameson, and Kiley. The first question asked citizens to rate the importance of the City of Sioux Falls making investments in some of the following. I'll give a few of the examples: streets, passenger air services, code enforcement, affordable housing, downtown development, public safety, which includes both police and fire. The second question, 2 and 3 actually, were authored by the ad hoc committee. It asks, should the city spend more money to enforce city rules about property maintenance, such as lawn mowing, weed control, snow removal? These expenses would include, but not limited to, hiring more employees and providing equipment and resources for them to do their work. Currently, these rules are enforced on a complaint basis, meaning citizens like you need to call City Hall for many city codes to be enforced. And the third question, are you satisfied with the city's effort to define zoning rules for land uses that help developments transition from single-family housing to other land uses, such as apartments, commercial, and industrial development? The fourth question, which I should have also added, question number 1, are carryovers from the last survey. This says, please indicate how much you agree or disagree with the following statement. The City of Sioux Falls should place a higher priority on investing taxpayer resources to promote job growth. And then there's the open-ended question that was carried over. What one thing can city government do to improve Sioux Falls? Please describe using the space below. If council agrees with the basic concept of these questions, staff will work with the National Citizen Survey folks to review and possibly wordsmith some of the questions. We will also consult with planning, who did raise a few concerns with the wordings in question number 2 and number 3. And finally, staff will present the final questions on early October informational meeting, just asking for a council's consensus or agreement on the final questions. Happy to answer any of your questions.
Council? Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Jim. Was it brought up in the committee about the use of making investments and changing that to, using tax money?
That was not discussed, but I know that Councilor Staggers, you had brought that up, and I will, if you want to bring that up too in that first question.
Well, it's just
Yep.
using the word investments. It's just to
Yep.
soften things. It's the use of tax money,
Yep.
and I think that it gives a better presentation of what's really going on.
Yeah.
This is not investments, really. It's just spending tax money.
Yep, and I know that you had brought that up, but the committee had already met, and so this is kind of the other forum for the council to discuss and have any recommendations for us as staff to make those changes and bring that up to the National Survey Group. And like I said too, the staff is requesting that council agree to the basic concept of these questions. We'll visit with the professionals and make some changes and make sure that the questions are not leading to a certain or trying to arrive at a certain result.
Councilor Staggers, if I can ask you, are you looking at question number 4 and the wording of place a higher priority on investing taxpayer resources? Is that the one?
I'm looking actually right now at number 1. Please rate the importance of the City of Sioux Falls making investments in the following. What we're doing is we're spending tax money on the following.
Okay.
That's what we're doing.
So your suggestion is, instead of making investments in the following, is to the City of Sioux Falls spending taxpayer dollars
Yes.
for the following?
Because that's really what's going on. When you invest, normally in business, you put money into maybe an account or something, and hopefully that's going to grow and grow and grow. But here, we're taking tax money and spending it. We're not trying to grow it. We're trying to spend.
Dean.
Councilor Erickson.
I'd be interested to see what they come back with as far as how to word them and discuss that. I think we're splitting hairs a little bit with that. Number 2 does say spend money. In our city, we all want to invest in the future of our city. If we are not fixing the streets, promoting job growth, or doing the things that are listed here, we fall behind and our city doesn't move forward. So An investment might mean we're putting a new dog park in. I'm looking at Director Carney here. So we put a new dog park in, okay? Maybe that doesn't look like the big investment that everybody sees in, but we're investing in the future of our city. We're investing in what taxpayers do want and how we can get people to come to our community and invest in our community. So I guess I disagree with some of that. One does say spend money, but I'd like to see maybe what the professionals have to say so we're not leading. But I think truly, yes, it's taxpayer dollars, but we are investing in the future of our city and leaving a legacy for the future of our city. So look at it either way you want. Investment does have a couple of different areas you could go, but I think we're splitting hairs with that somewhat.
Councilor Rolfing?
Yeah, a couple comments. First of all, Jim, question number one, rate the importance of, then we got promoting job growth. Aren't we being a little redundant, or was that the reason for doing number 4? Because it's asking the same question over again.
We could remove that. It's just, we just carried over what the previous question
But
was.
you see what
so-
I'm saying? If there's another question that what would be better in number 4, we've really asked that question in 1A. And so if there's another question on our optional ones that we want to include, it might be better to do that, unless, again, we want to do that twice to emphasize that emphasize its importance.
And I don't want to speak for the ad hoc committee, but I know that number 1 and number 4 were both recommended by the administration. The ad hoc committee did place a certain order to these questions, 1 through 4, by priority, because how the survey works is that if it doesn't, not all of them fit on the page, one of them are going to have to be removed, and so the committee looked at number 4 as the one that would be removed if it is necessary. What we could do, Councilor Rolfing, again, if it's the consensus of the group, is we could remove letter A in number 1, unless let me back up. If number 4 is included, we could remove letter A in number 1. If it is not included, we would keep letter A in number 1 there.
Understand. I just wanted to point that out to you that there is, and again, maybe there's a good reason for doing it that way. When you talk to the professionals on that, because it is an important topic, but does it need to be done twice?
Yep. Councilor Kiley.
And going back to Councilor Stagger's comment, Councilor Staggers, would you be, would it be more accepting to you, instead of making investments, if it were phrased investing tax dollars?
Well, I think it would be better, yeah. It would be better.
Because obviously we're going to collect the tax dollars, and I'm assuming that the public would like us to invest their tax dollars in something, because it is truly an investment, an improvement in your streets and your infrastructure. But I mean, I would, and I think, as Jim mentioned, that these can be wordsmithed and changed around, but I would have no problem with a change of that nature.
Yeah, that's a good compromise, I think.
Councilor Erpenbach?
Well, I wanted to thank the group that took this on, too. This was kind of a hassle to add to your workload, but I would then just respond to Councilor Rolfing's comments, and I would prefer that A stay there and that 4 stay there, and if at all possible. I think there are 2 different ways of looking at that question, and I think if you're leaving it in that, because you're rating the importance, you're going to see where it really falls in that larger group in number 1, so that would just be my 2 cents on it, but I appreciate the group's work, and I think these are great questions.
All righty then.
Mr. Chair?
So I guess between Councilor, I personally, going back to Councilor Stagger's change or recommendation, I don't think that most taxpayers fail to realize where that investment dollar is coming from. They know it's their tax-paying money. Sometimes we sugarcoat it a little bit by calling it making an investment, and if
But it is.
Councilors Kiley and Staggers want to work with Jim David to maybe change the semantics of that a little bit, would that be okay with the rest of the council? Okay. Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, just one quick question. Did anybody bring up number F, 1F, passenger air service? The city government of Sioux Falls doesn't deal with that at all. It's the airport authority. So maybe it's not appropriate for us to have it there because we don't deal with it.
Councilor Erpenbach.
I guess I would say there are probably a couple other things that the city doesn't technically deal with, including promoting job growth. We're not directly involved in that either. I think the question is, do you want to put tax dollars into these sorts of programs? I think it's a valid question, and I would defend number 1 and number 4 because they are carryovers, and you like to see some of that stability in the questions. So.
Okay. So what we're looking for is input from the citizens. How do they rate that? Do they see that as an important thing to talk about, whether or not we can influence it at this time? Good point. All righty. So what we're looking for then is just a consensus from the council then to forward this to the company that will, as Jim said, make sure it's worded properly and not in a leading format, to come back to us again in October. So we'll take care of one between Councilor Kiley and Councilor Staggers and Jim. Does anybody have objection to any other item in that survey? Mike Cooper, you had sent me an email wanting to, did you have something you wanted to add to this?
Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. I was just instructed to keep it short, so, from the audience. So, no, when I saw these today, I just had some questions and I contacted Jim. He was very good. I talked to Councilor Jameson about what the intent was in terms of questions 2 and 3. What is it that we're trying to find out? So I think what Jim is suggesting, that we'll continue to work together on these, I think that's a good process as we move forward. We did go back and look at the previous surveys that have questions about code enforcement and land use. And so again, I wasn't sure what the intent was. Of all the things that we could ask the citizens, how did we come up with these 2 specifics? So that's how I brought it up today.
Okay.
It was just a general question
We'll
about the questions.
We'll have another crack at it.
You bet. So I appreciate that opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Jameson?
Well, no, thanks, Mike.
Well, thank you.
I was just going to update the rest of the council on our conversation with Mike. The premise behind those 2 questions that we came up with was really based on all the things that we cover on the city council, all the things that we deal with. What causes us the most anxiety, and where are we maybe not as confident as we could be. And some of those things are those zoning changes where we have a room full of neighbors and they're leaning one way and the council's getting pushed in a different direction. You know how that causes us to stress a little bit. And so we want to know if we're doing a good job. And the same issue with the code enforcement. Just a couple of issues that we felt were pretty sensitive to the council. And if we could make changes to improve, that was part of the premise behind it all, was what could we do, if anything, differently, knowing the new information. So we wanted to ask a question that we could actually then make changes going forward. So that's why we came up with those.
Okay. All righty then. We'll put that agenda item to bed and move on to our Spellerberg Indoor Aquatic Center contract. Director Carney, welcome.
Thank you, Council Chair. Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation. This afternoon, we're really pleased to be able to present 3 different contracts associated with delivering the new indoor aquatic center at Spellerberg Park. The 3 contracts that we want to brief you on today are the construction manager at risk with Sioux Falls Construction, the architectural services agreement with TSP Architects, and the naming rights contracts with Legends. We wanted to present these to you today in anticipation of having them on your agenda on September 16th. With us today, we have several people in the audience to present the architectural and construction manager at risk contracts is Jim Wiedrich. Jim's with Woods Fuller Law Firm and assisted us with drafting those contracts. I'd also mention that Dick Strasberg with Tegra is with us as well. He's our owner's representative. Karen Leonard obviously was actively involved through our city attorney's office. And then we also have Tracy Turback, our finance director, Kendra Simmonsma, our project manager, and then Tori Miedema with our Parks and Rec team to kind of round out the folks that we have here today to be able to assist us with this presentation. And then it also mentioned that representatives for the 3 contracts are here as well. With Sioux Falls Construction, we have Randy Connect, Darren Haig, and Tony Wiseman, and we have Sean Irvin, from TSP, and then we also have Ryan Query from Legends, and so they're all here available for questions as well. Before we move on to having Jim start out with the presentations on the construction manager at risk and the architectural services contract, I did want to mention also that Brett Bradfield is here. Brett is with USF, and Brett sat in on our selection process for the construction manager at risk process and is here as a citizen representative as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jim to talk you through the A&E and construction manager contracts. Jim?
Good afternoon, council members and guests in the audience. It's been some time since I appeared before you with respect to the same types of contracts that we talked about and eventually approved and operated under with respect to the event center. I note that many of you have switched sides, so I'm feeling a little bit dyslexic this afternoon as I interact with the council members. We've been busy over the last month or so, several months with respect to the selection process for the construction manager at risk, and have put in quite a bit of time and effort into developing contracts that will be very similar and familiar to some of you who had approved the architect's contract and construction manager contract for the event center. We really did go through a lot of the same processes, and the construction and the design process will look virtually the same as they did before. With that in mind, let's kind of walk through the project just as a reminder of what the project includes. The project will include not only the Aquatic Center and the parking lot, but a number of park improvements. And those park improvements are identified in the slide before you. And a lot of those park improvements will actually be handled by your Park and Recreation Department separately from the contract that the construction manager at risk will work under. In addition, then, we also have water detention pond, which is part of the project. Then turning to the Aquatic Center itself, this information as to the scope of the initial Aquatic Center was included in public information that was made available earlier and included in the request for proposals for the construction manager. I won't go through each of those on an individual basis, but just note that that then is the basis from which the architect will begin the design process once the contract has been approved. So let's talk about the city project requirements. This part of the program, or this part of the contract process is really very, very similar to the event center in that you begin with an initial program which has already been identified and included in that prior slide with a little bit more detail. But then what happens after the contracts are negotiated is that the program will be more defined and better defined through work with TSP as your architect, and then that information will be set forth in Exhibit A, which will be negotiated and approved by not only the architect and the construction manager, but also the city. Then, with respect to the city's budget, you've approved a project budget at this point, and that budget will be the basis for which we will start on determining the budget for the various project components. There will be a lot of different line items, and that initial budget then will be developed in conjunction with the architect and the construction manager. Finally then, the schedule will also be negotiated as the project is better defined, and it will be updated from time to time as the parties agree through the design process. Note that the Aquatic Center is to be designed to meet basic LEED certification requirements. I would note that this is the lowest level of LEED certification. There are much higher and various levels above that. And one of the challenges that your team will have, including the architect and the construction manager, in an aquatic center is achieving LEED certification with an aquatic center that has high humidity. So keep in mind that that will be a challenge as these professionals proceed with your project. The construction manager at risk approach requires that the construction manager complete its portion of the project for no more than the guaranteed maximum price approved by the city. If the construction costs are less than the guaranteed maximum price, then those savings are retained by the city so that you are not responsible, or you enjoy the benefits of those cost savings. On the other hand, if the guaranteed maximum price, if the cost of construction exceeds that price, then at that point it is the cost of Sioux Falls Construction Company in footing those expenses, so that the city is guaranteed that once the guaranteed maximum price is established before construction starts, that that is the maximum that the city will pay with respect to that part of the project. And that process is identical then to the event center process. The city's architect's contract, the basis for this contract is one of the AIA documents. It's the B101 document. And I would say that there are substantial revisions to this document that have been negotiated between TSP and the city. Let's talk a little bit then about how we establish the guaranteed maximum price as the construction project proceeds. Remember, I told you earlier that the program would be identified in much more detail than what we have right now through the efforts of TSP and in negotiation and discussion and dialogue with the city and Sioux Falls Construction. The initial budget will be developed and included in Exhibit B, the schedule set forth in C. What then happens is that TSP begins to prepare the schematic design documents, and it would do so keeping in mind the program, the budget, and the schedule. During that process, Sioux Falls Construction will prepare a cost estimate for the work to confirm that the program and the budget are in alignment. If they're not in alignment, then the parties need to go back and they need to discuss how they want to proceed at that point, and it might require that TSP go back and rework the schematic design documents in order to stay within that budget and program. Once the schematic design documents have been approved, and that process then comes to a close, then TSP begins to prepare the design development documents, which are much more in-depth, literally thousands of pages of design and specs and drawings. And from that then, Sioux Falls Construction will prepare a cost estimate for the work, first at a juncture where the design development documents are 60% complete, so that you can kind of do a check off at that point to see if you're still in line with the budget. And then again, when the design development documents are 100% complete. At that point, you set the guaranteed maximum price based upon your negotiations with Sioux Falls Construction. And then TSP will begin to prepare the construction documents, which will be even more detailed and will be the documents upon which subcontractors come in and deal with Sioux Falls construction in order to bid the various portions of the project. So the various construction trades. So what you do in that process then is you stop at 45% of preparation of the construction documents, retest your guaranteed maximum price, and you do it again at 90% completion of the construction documents. So the construction manager at risk process is one where really the city only has 2 contracts for that portion of the project. You have your architect's contract and you have your construction manager contract. The construction manager then goes out and it is the party that is responsible for entering into contracts with suppliers, entering into contracts with laborers, entering into contracts with various types of subcontractors. Those subcontracts are all the domain of the construction manager. They don't come back here because the construction manager at risk is the one that is at risk in those bids coming in accordance with the guaranteed maximum price that has been approved by the city. The architect's project services then are the programming services that we've talked about, schematic design services, design development, construction documents, preparation, and then they assist in the bidding and then of course supervise the construction services as the project is built. The architect's fee in this case has been negotiated at 6.75% of the guaranteed maximum price. So right now, TSP can't tell you for certain what it's going to be paid because we don't have a guaranteed maximum price. But they know that if you approve their contract, they know their percentage that they will be paid based upon that number, which is eventually approved by the city. The services then that are rendered by the architect will provide for payment over time of the schematic design services. That there's a percentage there for the various elements so that you try and coordinate payment in conjunction with the services that have been rendered to a certain date as you go through the process. The next slide then identifies the reimbursable expenses, which are in addition to the 6.75% of the guaranteed maximum price. The construction manager at risk contract is based upon AIA forms also. There are 2 forms that are included, A133, which is the standard form of agreement between the owner and the construction manager, and then A201, which are the general conditions of the contract for construction. Those 2 documents have also been substantially revised in accordance with input from Tegra, input from the city, and then also in addition with respect to the negotiation with Sioux Falls Construction. The process for determining the guaranteed maximum price is set forth exactly the same way in the construction manager's contract as it is in the architect's contract. And then we have the construction manager's compensation. The pre-construction services are at a fixed price of $95,000, and then the construction services compensation is 3.5% of the cost of the work. There are 2 elements to the guaranteed maximum price. There is the cost of the work, and there is the construction manager's fee, the 3.5%. So if you add those 2 figures together, that will determine what your construction manager compensation will be for this project. The construction manager will be required then, got ahead of myself. The cost of the work includes labor costs, subcontract costs, costs of materials and equipment, and then costs of other materials and equipment such as temporary facilities and related items. There's a list of miscellaneous costs that are also included in the cost of the work, so you're not paying for those separately. They're all under the guaranteed maximum price. And then they will be required to provide a performance and payment bond, and the bond premiums are also part of the guaranteed maximum price. Now, in summary, the construction manager approach is that the city contracts with the construction manager, sets the guaranteed maximum price pursuant to state law, and once that is done, then Sioux Falls Construction is free to negotiate contracts with subcontractors. Some of those contracts may be competitively bid. Some of those contracts may be negotiated directly with the subcontractors. And because it's a construction manager at risk process, Sioux Falls Construction is not required to competitively bid every element of that project as if the city were out doing the project itself. The city would be subject to the state laws which require competitive bids, except in rare circumstances. So the benefit to the city in this process is that you get a guaranteed maximum price. If it goes over the price, it's not your responsibility. If it goes under the price, you retain the savings. With that, I'll turn it over to questions and seek the assistance of the other folks in the audience here that may be able to answer various questions. Oh, okay. I guess we're going to wait until the Legends presentation has been made. Perfect. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon once again. Like with the Event Center contract and the project, we do plan to use Legends to assist us with the naming rights on the Indoor Aquatic Center. And I'll hit the next slide. Part of the requirements of Legends with their proposed contract that you'll see is that for them to sell the exclusive naming rights for the Indoor Aquatic Center. And that's essentially, who gets to name the building. For example, in the case of the Event Center, is a Denny Sanford Premier Center. That's really the focus of their work as part of this contract. They will manage the naming rights negotiation process. They'll implement a public relations strategy to announce the naming rights partnership. And then they'll also establish pricing for key individual assets. And essentially what that'll be is an additional list of those assets they believe that we can market and sell. For example, some of the interior finishes, whether it be pools being named, the outdoor splash pad potentially being named. They'll come up with those list of ideas that they think are marketable and that we can sell. But what in this particular case, they believe they're probably best positioned to sell the actual exclusive naming rights on the facility, but they would provide that list of potential sponsor opportunities for for the city to sell themselves. The term of the agreement is pretty short-lived. They expect that work can be done in about 5 months. They do propose, and we've agreed through negotiations with them, that a flat fee of $20,000 is appropriate. And then any naming rights agreement that is received by the City of Sioux Falls, they would receive 12.5% of that naming rights agreement. And the other thing to point out, and I believe it's the same way with the Event Center, is that as we get paid on any sponsorship and naming rights payments, they too would get paid. So if we get an annual installment, they would get their 12.5% in annual installments as well. Ryan Query, again, is here as well, and be glad to answer any questions you have about the Legends contract. I guess we could open it up to any and all questions on all three then at this point.
Okay.
Council, questions? Councilor Staggers.
Yes. For Mr. Wiederick, Sioux Falls Construction, have they ever been involved in being construction manager like this?
I'll let Randy respond to that. My understanding is that they were evaluated on a number of criteria, and he would be able to tell you their experience.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Yes, Counselor, probably 80...
Yourself, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry. Randy Connect, I'm President and CEO of Sioux Falls Construction. About 80% of our work is done under this delivery system, the construction manager at risk. So it's a delivery system that we're very familiar with, very comfortable with, and strongly advocate.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilor Jameson.
Jim, if we could, so the similarities between the event center and the indoor pool, you say are pretty similar. And so at what point, I mean, we've all thought and talked about how much money would be spent on the indoor pool, but there's a point in here, though, we could add more money to it, right?
I believe so, yes. If indeed the recommendation came back that the guaranteed maximum price was higher than what you had originally envisioned or authorized, then they'd have to come back to City Council, I believe, for that approval. Tracy?
I would think, yes. And
yes.
At what point, though? I mean, that's like after 60% of the bids are received? Is that what I heard?
No, in this case, this is a little bit different than the event center in this regard. With the event center, construction proceeded on certain trades before the guaranteed maximum price was actually established. And Dick Strasberg might be able to explain that process in a little more detail as they went through that. But it's my understanding that that there were certain trades that if they would have bid it all up front before construction started, that there would have been that the bidders would have had enough contingency in their bids that the city would likely have paid more for the entire project than if it did by establishing the guaranteed maximum price further down the road. Because this is a shorter construction process, and because it is not as large a construction process, it's my understanding that that the difference then is that in this case, the guaranteed maximum price will be confirmed before any construction is commenced.
Okay, I think that's good. That's how you remember it.
Yeah, I had if I may,
Councilor Alton.
I had a big question mark there that I seem to remember that the maximum price on the event center came in well after the time that
yes.
Construction started. And
that
you were saying the contracts were exactly the same.
Well,
your explanation, I understand your explanation, makes perfect sense. And so, yeah, but this one would be that way.
No.
If I could.
Councilor Jameson.
There was a point where the contracts, whether they were bid on price or
proposals.
There you go, competitive bids or not, or competitive proposals. Both approaches and the subcontractors' contracts are subject to the city's approval. Does that mean that if we wanted to, we could, or does it just mean that it doesn't mean that it's required?
It is my understanding that the city will be able to approve those subcontractors that are used. And if there's somebody that is objectionable to the city, that the city could reject that bid. Now, if that is indeed happening, there may be a negotiation then with Sioux Falls Construction, because the next bidder might be significantly higher, and that puts the construction manager at risk then of spending more money or exceeding the cap for the guaranteed maximum price. But the city is reserving the right to approve those contracts.
And when you say, I'm sorry, if you say city, who is city? Who? Would that be
it would be Public Works, or Rec? Well, administration, right.
Okay, and so, if I could, one last question.
No, go on, Counselor.
So then, in like the event center, if the administration represents the city, which I understand, does that open it up that anybody, a designee of some sort, I mean, the city administration walks in and says, I don't like the color of the paint, I want to change the paint, the tile, I don't like that tile color, whatever. I mean, does that kind of happen, and can that happen? And does the authority lie with just one person, or does it rely on the designee of a group or some sort? How does that work?
Well, I think there's a difference between approving the contractors and then approving the actual finishes and items that go into the construction process. And it would be a combination of TSP and the city, the administration, approving whatever finishes are proposed as part of the construction process.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Kiley.
A point of clarification. You'd mentioned the architect's fees will be 6.75% of the guaranteed maximum price. And we will not know that until we have established the guaranteed maximum price. So is it safe to assume then that the architect's fee is actually in addition to the guaranteed maximum price? So it's
Yes.
outside of that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and the city's budget will identify a number of items. It could include the park improvements. There might be then there'll be the construction or the professional fees such as Tegra's, our fees, and the architect's fees would all be part of line items in the budget, but they're not. And then the guaranteed maximum price is just one of those line items in the budget.
Thank you.
Councilor Erickson.
Just kind of, that was a similar question I had too, so thank you for addressing that. So we'll just say a nice round number of, say our budget's $20 million for the pool, the Aquatic Center. The construction fees, attorney fees, architect fees, all of that will be on top of that, is what I'm...
All on top of the guaranteed maximum price, but all within the city's budget.
Yes. Okay. And then one last question I had for Sioux Falls Construction. How many, do you have a general percentage of the subcontractors that will be local? Is there, do you strive for 50%? Do you strive for 90%? How is that viewed upon?
Really?
Our goal would be to use as much local participation as we can. So I don't know that this project necessarily has a goal set for it, but our goal is to continuously use. I mean, it's just in the best interest to use as much local participation as we can to help the local economy. So that would be our goal. Is there might be certain specialties that we cannot use local trades to do the work, but where possible, we will work with that as long as we can work within the budget.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Rolfing.
Jim, correct me if I'm wrong. The way this sounds is that we get this bid, we get the maximum construction cost set. Something goes not haywire or something, the price of steel doubles in that time, and they have to come back and redo the bid. It appears to me that the council is giving up our responsibility to look at any contract that exceeds by $25,000 or would exceed it by or needs to be changed by $25,000. Is that correct?
Let me talk a little bit about that guaranteed maximum price. That guaranteed maximum price will have in it a number of items, and I can invite Dick Strasberg up here to talk a little bit in depth about that. But one of those items is a contingency. And one of the reasons that that we've got so many of those points in time when the construction manager is weighing in on the cost of the project as it is being designed, is to avoid surprises like that, so that they're checking with steel suppliers and other subcontractors based upon what they're seeing in the schematic design documents, what they're seeing in the design development documents, so that they've got a really good idea as to what those bids are going to come in at as the project is moved forward. But then I'll let Dick talk a little bit more about the construction contingency that is included in the construction manager's guaranteed maximum price, and that's a set percentage.
Good afternoon, Dick Strasberg with the Tegra Group. So maybe I could just make a few comments in terms of just the overall construction manager at risk delivery method. It's new to the city, but it's definitely not new to the industry. What is typical, if you view the construction manager as a partner who has a guaranteed price that we're going to pay them, we're going to pay them 3.5%. That's what we're going to be paying them. That's our potential profit on it, and that's it. There's no other, we don't have other avenues for them to have profit. Okay, so now together we work with them and we're bidding out the various packages. So we all have the same motivation here. We want to get a complete package. We want to get everything in it that's in the plans and specifications and everything that the owner desires. And we want to select the best qualified contractor to do that. And what's different on it compared to a traditional hard bid is on a hard bid, you open the bid and what that contractor says he'll do it for, that's what they've got to do it for, right? So now on this, what happens is they submit their pricing and then we have a chance to interview them. And we go through and interview, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have all these different things? So we go through and we go through and make sure they've got everything included. We also can give them the opportunity to come back and say, what are ways that you have, ideas you have for saving money? What are ways that are more efficient? So that's where the negotiation is. But it is at the end of the day, I look at the event center. I mean, we went with low bid in just about every case. I think the only things we didn't lean towards the low bid if there was something that was a local component of taking someone that was an East Coast provider or something like that compared to having it local. So I mean, at the end of the day, we'll have to go low bid unless there's a really compelling reason to not go low bid. So I don't know if that helps kind of explain the process more. And in terms of contingency, what we do is work with the contractor in terms of identifying what the risks are. On the event center, we went into it with a 5% contingency for the construction manager. Now, as the project moved forward, we want to be pulling that back. We want to be saying, okay, we're past this risk and we're past that risk. So then we negotiate to get additional contingency back. So then that's where the additional things that are bid out originally as alternates, we can add back into the project.
That's fine when we've got it going that way. What if it goes the other direction?
Then the contractor has to take it. For example, your example on inflation, if it goes past what their guaranteed maximum price is, that's the contractor's risk. So to use your example of the steel
cost,
yeah, the steel costs went up, and we ran into that in 2008 when the prices really spiked up, and there's some contractors that kind of got stuck with that. Okay.
Councilor Jameson.
Not sure who to maybe talk to, but your comments about the contractor at risk were helpful to us to understand that, you know, there's a partnership that's created that's a plus for us. The downside is some of the transparency that we normally had in other projects. And I think we've picked up some sentiment from the public about the lack of transparency in the event center, but we pick up benefits by having that partnership and a cost that's controlled. So I think we're all kind of just adjusting to this new form. So, but thank you for your comments. A couple of questions. You know, I've heard a lot of good comments about Kendra and her involvement in the event center. Will you be the project manager? Okay, very good. That's good. Secondly is the whoever would be involved and who selected Sioux Falls Construction. I think that's great. We have that. But did Mortensen apply? I mean, they were right here. They're here. They've just experienced the city.
They elected to not
They
pursue
did not.
this project.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question, if I may, regarding the construction manager at risk in general. How do we know that they have the ability to absorb anything that goes over? Do we have any sort of financial guarantee set aside that if it goes $2 million over budget, how do we know that they have the financial ability to absorb that type of a hit?
Well, I don't know if they submitted any financial information during the RFP process, but we have the payment and performance bond. And if they're unable to finish the project, then you go against the bond.
Well, we do have a bond requirement for this.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, Don? You mentioned that Legends has a very short contract of 5 months. When does it start and end?
It would start as soon as the contract's approved by the city council. And so as soon as that, it's available to get approved next Tuesday night. Assuming you approve that,
okay,
they would get started.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Downstairs, right there. Also, I guess, this scope of work and that, we have Kendra as the project manager, but like with the event center, it seemed like Public Works was also in the lead on this. Is Parks Department going to be on the same level on this project?
It'll be a combination of both Public Works and Parks and Rec, finance, legal. I mean, there's a lot of folks that have their fingers on this project. Robbie Varick is the I don't know what his official title is on the event center, but he's on the job site a lot. He too will be on this project as well. Having been through the construction management process with the event center, working directly with Kendra and Dick on the project itself, it's the same exact team on the event center as it is on this as it relates to those three individuals. And then obviously Jim Weidrich's helped us with the contracts, very similar to in the past. But obviously our staff have some expertise in this area, so we'll be actively involved in a variety of different facets of the project.
And then during the presentations, there's several contracts that are going to be outside of that guarantee that we're doing. But all of these contracts will be paid out of the $20 million that the council approved. We won't have to access any other funds to take care of everything.
We've established a budget for the project based on the Councilman Hunsaker report on the large indoor aquatic center. Remember those different toolbox options that we had? And so we based our budget based on that large indoor aquatic center. But the reality is that we're working from concept plans at this point. And so you're seeing these three contracts come forward now so that TSP, Sioux Falls Construction, and Dick and Kendra and all the entire team can get together to start working on more detailed design so that we can really determine what that guaranteed maximum price is and ultimately be able to know what it's going to cost to do the work.
So we may go above the $20 million that the council's approved.
At this point, we don't know yet because we haven't got into the detailed design. Because if you remember, when we originally set the dollar amount, we still had an election to go through to determine where the site would even be. At the time, we didn't know whether it was going to be at Spellerberg and the nice thing about the toolbox option, it wasn't site specific. It was just a footprint of a large indoor aquatic center and an estimate of what that would cost.
So that sounds like you're leaving the option over to transferring money from your budget into this project.
Well, what I'm saying at this point is that we don't have enough information to determine, to know what the guaranteed maximum price is.
Councilor Rolfing?
Yeah, Jim, seemed to me that and maybe I'm being, I don't want to say negative, but I'm one of those guys that thinks of what ifs. What if let's put it this way in hard numbers. Sioux Falls Construction is going to get about $700,000 in profit on this. If this overruns, if the overruns on this thing are $2 million, where's that extra money going to come from? Are they going to have to come up with it, and does the bond cover that? That's only a 10% overrun.
If indeed that overrun comes under the contract and the subcontracts that Sioux Falls Construction is able to bid out and put in place, that comes from them. Now, if the guaranteed maximum price comes back and it is in excess of your $20 million, I'm the wrong person to answer what happens by way of approval that are necessary. I don't have that answer. I'd turn that over to the city folks that are here today that might be able to answer that.
But you understand my concern. We've got a bond, a building bond or whatever you call it, that says, you know, if the maximum is $20 million,
right,
but somewhere down the line something happens and we've got that, you know. I remember when I was when the Great Lakes, all the things were, they did the canal up there. That's exactly what happened up there, and the company went bankrupt.
I think, from my experience, the benefit of the construction manager at risk process is that you have all of these stopping points that you keep checking the potential costs. And I can't imagine that the construction manager would go out and not verify to a pretty significant extent what those costs are going to be at each juncture, so that, I mean, they're in it to make money, not to end up in a situation where they've got to dig into their own pockets to do that.
The only concern I have is that if that does happen, that we don't get stuck putting in the extra $2 or $3 million or whatever it would be, and have to go out and get a new contractor to do that. Now, Randy, I'm sure that's not going to happen. Please, I'm looking at this as overall, what the red flags in my mind go up. So
there have been projects where owners have had to get into the performance and payment bond and in order to complete a project.
Okay. Councilor Erickson?
I know with the event center, and I don't know if you're the person to ask this question to or if it's Kendra or Dean. For me and whoever else on the council, I think it would be a great idea if we get bi-monthly updates like we did the event center, just to kind of know the progress, where we're at, what's happening. Those have been helpful for me being new on the council and learning the process.
Sure.
This is a shorter contract. However, just to have those updates,
Absolutely.
I think would be very helpful.
Kendra Simmons, I'm a special projects manager. So yes, the internal city team has already talked about regular updates with council, and so I just need to work with the city clerk's team to get on those regular updates.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson?
Kendra? Just looking at the architect's projected services, one of the projected services is construction document services.
Okay.
Listed here.
Okay.
And then on the next page, you have reimbursable expenses. And one of those expenses is printing of construction documents. Wouldn't that fall underneath the category? The printing document services, to me, means creation of documents and printing them.
So I'll defer to Dick Strasberg on that. I suspect it's a standard language.
I guess the way I describe that is construction documents are paying for the staff to create the documents. I'm an architect myself, and the three phases are, the schematic design is, if you take this room, for example, the schematic design of this room would outline the walls, it would show the walls, it would show the openings of the windows, it would show kind of the general layout of the council and so on. It would be enough that you'd have a good idea of what you're going to get. Design development documents would start to say, oh, this is oak, this is carpet on the floor, and it would really start to really drill in on what the finishes are. Construction documents would give instructions to the bidders exactly, and the ones to build it, on how are you going to build this thing. you know, what actually is, what's the manufacture of that ceiling tile, what are the manufacture of the lights and so on. So the construction documents is really a process of creating all the plans. Then you've got the reimbursable expense on it. We like to keep that as reimbursable because the direction this is all going, it's all electronic. And the city has a setup with a vendor where we can give them the disk, and then the subcontractors have to pay for their own plans. Now, when we bring plans to you or to a public meeting or things that need to be printed or for internal review, we need to pay for those documents. So it's not it used to be the construction documents or printing of that was a very big deal. That's not the case anymore because the subs now pick up those costs because the architects deliver an electronic format to a printer, and then the printer pays it, you know, the subs pay for the printing then.
Okay. And just one question. Okay, then under the architect projected services, that would fall underneath the guaranteed price?
No.
That's going to be something outside
that's
of
separate,
that again?
Yeah, so that's not part of the construction.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, I was going to ask Kendra a question. It's actually in regard to the event center.
Okay.
Because I was out there yesterday, because this is the week of September 8th when we're supposed to start the new siding.
Sure.
It hadn't happened yesterday. Is it happened today, or is it going to happen in the next few days?
Okay, so is there any other questions for well, I certainly can address your answer, Councilor Staggers. My understanding is that the material is on site. I don't know the status of if there's physically going on the wall today. I wasn't out there to see that today, but I do know the material's on site.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question, Kendra, and this might be for you, regarding the sale of naming rights and for capital and or ongoing operation costs.
Sure.
Do we have an idea of, you know, do we give them a budget and say we want so much? Can you speak to that process?
Sure. I'd actually like to bring that to Tracy Turback to come up and talk to that. And then Ryan is here too, but I don't know if Ryan would even be able to speak to what their projected market value would be for an indoor aquatic center. But I'd actually ask Tracy to come up.
And I guess my question really is, are we looking for money to help with the capital costs, or are we looking more for the operating side?
Tracy Turback with the Finance Office. I don't know that we'll turn any money down. I think we're going to approach it just as we did with the event center in a very open-minded way. I think we certainly have our preferences, but if there are different viewpoints from parties that are interested in buying the naming rights that would tip the scale in that, you know, go in a different direction, I think, you know, we're going to keep it all on the table and try to maximize the benefit one way or another. But certainly, you know, we've talked about that in the past. The initial thought, the preference coming out of the chute is to have a long-term agreement where we can get installment payments over the course of time that would then be used to offset the operating costs for the facility. But that's not set in stone. I think we'll look at any options that Legends can kind of ferret out from those companies or individuals that might be interested in having the facility named.
Thank you. Councilor Jameson.
I hate to even say it, but prior to the election, I had worked really diligently to get a performa built out on the Spellerberg pool, but it was much to the angst of some, and so it was never created. But I think we entered in the idea of building a pool just with the best intentions, the hopes that we would recover or get some revenue generated from the naming rights and do the best we can. I guess we're past that bridge, so I'm not going to recover it again. But on the process here, Jim, the council will approve this. We've already approved the process of hiring a manager at risk, but do we approve these contracts later?
I'm not following your question.
What other action will the city council have to take in regard to these?
To my knowledge, none.
None. And the only other concern was that, you know, we're just coming off essentially ending our biggest project ever in the city, and it's under a contract manager at risk. I'm just afraid we haven't learned some things from that we're not incorporating, or maybe we have, our best practices or something we picked up that we could have done differently. And for instance, the one that comes to my mind is the city. Who is the city? And because I've heard stories about city out there doing things that you wouldn't understand why they would be out there in that kind of capacity. But so I'm just trying to figure it out. We're kind of done, aren't we? You're just kind of informing us of what we've already done, right? Lots of questions. I'm sorry, Jim. Don't have to answer it. I just was maybe thinking there was another step in this process, but there isn't. We're already,
Well, my notes say that we will get the contracts at our next Tuesday meeting on the 16th to approve these contracts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to have 3 contracts, right?
Right. There are contracts that are coming for your review. I don't know what's been distributed.
Yes, thank you. I'm Karen Leonard, Deputy City Attorney. We have scheduled these for City Council action, both the TSP contract, the contract for Sioux Falls Construction as Construction Manager at Risk, and the Legends contract will be presented to the Council next Tuesday night. You'll see that the Construction Manager at Risk and the Architect contract are coming to you by resolution. And the reason for that is due to the fact that we're also asking for you to approve, allowing the administration to approve any change orders, amendments to those contracts, because our experience had been with the Event Center, and we expect it to be true in any project of this size, that decisions in the field need to be made quite quickly. And so we're asking for your approval to give us the approval to make those decisions administratively.
Councilor Anderson.
One more question for the city attorney, please. Excuse me. So if we give that approval to allow you to do it administratively, they will not, those contracts won't show up on the consent agenda then, will they?
The amendments to their contracts will not show up on the consent agenda. But with the Construction Manager at Risk delivery method, Sioux Falls Construction enters directly into those contracts with the subcontracts, so ordinarily you wouldn't see those anyway, even if I wasn't running the resolution, if that makes sense. Through the contract itself, they're allowed to enter into the contracts with the subcontractors.
Okay, but you said any amendments or additions would need to be approved by the city, by the administration, correct?
Right.
How are we going to be notified of those actions?
I think we can develop a process to do that. I haven't discussed it with Kendra yet, but we'll do the same as what we did in the Event Center. But in those contracts, you gave us the approval to go ahead and enter into amendments, change orders, and any of the other form documents that the construction manager deals with in the field.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Kiley?
It's safe to assume then that any amendments done in the field would still have to stay within the guaranteed maximum price. Thank you.
Yes, the resolution says that they will stay within their guaranteed maximum price. The language is there.
Councilor Erpenbach?
Not really a question, but just maybe a comment. I'm just hearing possibly some criticism of the contract manager at risk process, and I just would caution council, if you don't want to do it that way, there are other way more complicated ways to do it. We can certainly do that, but we've already told them that's how we're running this process. And so I guess, and Kendra and Karen have both said it, is that we're going to say we're only going to spend X number of dollars on this. And it is going to be less than 20 million. I'll just say that out loud because I know those numbers are starting to float up there. It's going to be 20 or less. But I think that we need to understand as council, we have complete control over this process through contract manager at risk. And I'm just concerned if we don't want to do it that way, this is the time to do it. Let's not approve contracts next week under contract manager at risk if we're uncomfortable doing that. I, for one, am very comfortable doing it. I think the event centers run well. I think that our updates have been amazing. I think we've known exactly who's working on there and how much we've spent on it at any given time. I think it's a great process. But if I'm just hearing my colleagues say, we're not so excited about that now. So just throwing that out there. Let's not vote next week if you're uncomfortable with that process.
Councilor Erickson.
Karen, don't go too far. And maybe this was asked before, but I guess I'm not hearing it as clear as just wanting a yes or no, I guess. If it is over 20 million, sorry, I got to use that number. It's a nice round number. Anything over $20 million will have to come back before the council for approval.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Staggers.
Well, I guess one concern I have is what Councilor Anderson has brought up. He's brought up a number of issues here, asking, well, is this under the guaranteed maximum price? No. Is this under the guaranteed maximum price? No. Can we get it clarified as to what is additional beyond the guaranteed maximum price? It doesn't seem.
If you could add to that, if it's not under the guaranteed maximum price, it still comes under the budget amount that's set for the entire budget for the process, $20 million. Is that correct? Can I get somebody up there to acknowledge that?
Don Kearney with Parks and Rec. The council has set a budget for this project, and any additional funds over and above that would require council approval. So you'll have an opportunity if there is a request for additional funds, not saying there is, but if there is, we would have to seek additional appropriations and invite Tracy up if he has anything contrary to that to say.
Councilor Anderson.
And Don, that's what I was asking earlier. Those contracts that are outside of that guarantee, that any of those contracts that we approve, they will still be paid out of that $20 million.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah.
Not out of your not out of your Parks Department budget, but out of this project budget.
To be clear, the Aquatic Center is what the City Council's approved, but there's also those other list of park improvements. You know, we at one point we had planned to resurface and remove and replace the tennis courts. We held off doing that because we knew that this project potentially could happen. We have other facilities that need to be relocated, like the sand volleyball courts and the basketball courts. Those are projects that we would take on as part of our capital budget. When we use the dollar amount in the aquatic facility master plan, it didn't consider any relocation of all these other amenities that were within the park. If that makes sense. So that's the basis for the number that's in our original budget request is in the aquatic facility master plan, and it didn't include any other park improvements that would potentially have to be relocated. Again, it was not site specific. But to answer your question, if there are more, there is a request for dollars in excess of what you've already authorized through your budget process, it would have to come back to council.
Thank you. And just to reply to Councilor Urfenbach, this is the second time we've used the construction manager at risk. I think that the first time there was a lot of questions as we went through the process, and unfortunately, or fortunately for the public, now is our time to ask those questions. It isn't a statement on the project at manager risk process. It's just doing our due diligence and asking those questions we feel needed to be asked.
Councilor Urfenbach.
I hope that's true, because the feeling that I'm getting, I'm just saying that, is it's a feeling as a human being, as a citizen watching you talk about this. You're very critical of construction manager at risk and talking about how it's not a transparent process. And I've heard stories about things going on out there, and let's define who the city is. Let's be really careful. I think we need to, if we're going to vote for this as a council, that we need to put our full faith in this process. That, yeah, absolutely we ask our questions, but that we need to have our full faith in this process so citizens understand it is a good process. It really has worked very well with the event center, and that we do support it.
Well, I feel we'll do that when we vote on it.
Councilor Erickson.
One more small question for you, Don. What is going to be the entire cost of the campus, of all the C1 through 7 and D and B, and is there an actual number for A, B, C, and D that you have?
Not at this stage.
And is Sioux Falls Construction going to be in charge of A through D, or just A?
I believe that that'll be part of the process that we'll work with Sioux Falls Construction, because some of the things that we've talked about is that we have some standard design specifications that we use for basketball courts, for example, or shelters where, you know, it's sitting in the engineering's office and we just hit print and you got another version of our shelter. And so, again, we're still building up our team as a result of these 3 contracts. And so when we start to get our team together, we can give you some more information about more detail on the types of things you're asking.
Because, well, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but we've built playgrounds, we've built tennis courts, we've built volleyball courts, we've done each of these things. So to not have a general idea of what park improvements based on each thing that's done, I mean, there's no estimates, we're just know we're going to do this.
No, I would say that, I'll just ballpark it. I would say it's in that $500,000 to $800,000 range.
For C or?
For C.
Okay.
That helps.
I would be interested in getting more detail on that too as you come forward with it, just to know what we're looking at as far as the entire project, not just the Aquatic Center, but everything as a whole, and exactly if Sioux Falls Construction is doing the Aquatic Center and the rest, and if we'll get any set prices on those as well, would be helpful as well. And I do appreciate Sioux Falls Construction being awarded this. I think it's fantastic that we're doing this locally. They've been in the business a long time, and I think it's a good thing for our city.
Councilor Erpenbach?
Then I would just ask about C as well. Are any of those items currently in the CIP? You said we put off the tennis court previously. That would have been a CIP project in the last couple of years. Are they in the current CIP that we're voting on this month? Some of these items in C?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
All righty. Well questioned, well vetted. And necessarily so. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. Appreciate it. Council?
Move to adjourn, Anderson.
Don't need a motion. I'm going to adjourn it.
Well, you got one anyway.